Okay, students, so this is course CAM 342 and this is lecture 4 and the topic is role of adrenal medulla and adrenal cortex, which is in connection with the previous lecture in which we discussed the adrenal glands. And I am Dr. Musaddiq Ibrahim, Assistant Professor, Department of Chemistry, Cust. So the topics to be discussed include the types of adrenal glands like the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla, the general features of adrenal glands, that how they operate, then are the functions of adrenal medulla like the hormones which are secreted by the adrenal medulla and their effects on the human body. Stress and adrenal glands, so how both of them are connected together, what is the effect of the stress on the adrenal glands, role of cortisol hormone, and right. So now moving towards the general features of adrenal hormones, and so the adrenal hormones, these are fat soluble and they attach with the carrier proteins to travel, and when they arrive at the site of action, either they dissociate or diffuse or bind to the cytoplasmic nucleus receptors. So either there are cytoplasmic receptors or nucleus receptors which are present on the cell or inside the nucleus, to which the adrenal hormones they bind, and as a result they perform their function. Now, relating to the regulation of the adrenal hormones, that how they are being regulated. So one of the mechanism is by synthesis, that is when the adrenal hormones secretion is less, then the synthesis is increased of the adrenal hormones to compensate for the deficiency of the adrenal hormones. And if the adrenal hormones are in high quantity, then the catabolism is the mechanism of regulation by which they are being degraded, and as a result the concentration of the adrenal hormones is decreased, and the catabolism of the adrenal hormones takes place mainly in the liver. Now moving towards the adrenal medulla functions. So the functions, before the functions, we need to know that where the adrenal medulla is located. So it is located directly atop each kidney and stimulated by sympathetic nervous system. So the difference between adrenal medulla and adrenal cortex is that adrenal cortex, which is the outer core of the adrenal gland, so that is not innervated by the sympathetic nervous system. But in case of adrenal medulla, it is being innervated by the sympathetic nervous system, and also the adrenal medulla is stimulated by the sympathetic nervous system. And as a result of stimulation by the sympathetic nervous system, the adrenal medulla, it secretes the catecholamines. So the catecholamines are the epinephrine and norepinephrine. So about epinephrine, so it invokes a fight or flight response. So when there is a stress condition, either it is a fighting condition or it is a flight condition, means like running away from the fight. So in both the cases, the central nervous system, it stimulates the adrenal medulla, and as a result the epinephrine is being secreted by the adrenal medulla. Now, as a result of secretion of epinephrine, what is happening is it increases the heart rate as well as the blood pressure. Also, one of the functions of epinephrine is to increase the process of respiration, and one of the another function of epinephrine upon its secretion is increasing the metabolic rate, that is the synthesis of carbohydrate, protein and fat metabolic pathways. Another function of epinephrine is to increase the glycogenolysis. So glycogenolysis is the breakdown of glycogen to produce glucose, and then the glucose is used for the energy utilization. And another function of the epinephrine upon its secretion is vasodilation, which is the widening of the blood vessels. Now moving towards the stress and the adrenal glands. So the stress and adrenal gland are very closely connected with each other, and as a result of stress due to certain conditions, when the stress is happening, so then the adrenal gland is secreting its hormones to decrease the stress. So looking at this schematic diagram, you can see that first of all, this is the stress which has increased, and as a result of increasing of stress, the hypothalamus from the brain secretes CRH, which stands for corticotropin releasing hormone. So when this CRH is released by the hypothalamus, so then it causes or stimulates the anterior pituitary to secrete ACTH. Now the ACTH stands for the adrenocorticotropic hormone. Now this adrenocorticotropic hormone, it causes adrenal cortex to secrete cortisol hormone. So here we have to remember that in case of the stress condition, the adrenal cortex secretes cortisol hormones. Now what is done by the cortisol hormones is that it reaches the bloodstream and increases the metabolic processes of carbohydrate, fat, and proteins. So as a result of increased metabolism of carbohydrate, fat, and protein, there are many results which are taking place, like blood glucose level increases, fatty acid mobilization is taking place for the sole purpose of gluconeogenesis. And as we know that gluconeogenesis is the synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate molecules like fats and proteins. So as a result of gluconeogenesis, the energy is produced, as well as the amino acid mobilization for gluconeogenesis is also taking place. So again, through this, the energy is being produced, and along with this, the tissue repair process is also taking place. So all these processes, as a result of secretion of cortisol, reduce the stress, and that is how the adrenal gland, they decrease the stress phenomena. Now, as we have discussed that the cortisol secretion, it helps in reducing the stress condition. So now here we are going further into the details of cortisol effects and the body responses to stress. So as a result of cortisol secretion, what is happening is the memory function is enhanced, the learning and mood is being stabilized. So that is all happening as a function of the cortisol secretion. Another function is the gluconeogenesis, which we have discussed in previous slide, that the formation or the biosynthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate materials like fat molecules and protein molecules is taking place for the production of energy ultimately. Also, as a result of cortisol secretion, skeletal muscles breakdown is taking place. The lipolysis is also taking place as a result of cortisol secretion. So lipolysis is the breakdown of lipid molecules so that the fat molecules are available for the process of gluconeogenesis. And another function of cortisol, or the effect of cortisol, is the calcium balance, that inside the cell and outside the cell of the human body, the calcium intake and its balance is being maintained by the cortisol secretion. Another function which is very important is the immune depression as a result of cortisol secretion. So immune depression means that taking down the immune response. So when there is a hypersensitivity reaction taking place as a result of autoimmune response, so that autoimmune response is being taken down, or it's being compromised with the help of cortisol. And that is why in case of autoimmune diseases, the synthetic form of cortisol is also given to the patients so that the immune response can be decreased. So now the cortisol effects and body responses to stress, that when the cortisol secretion is taking place from the adrenal cortex and how it is maintaining or reducing the stress condition. So this is the circadian figure for the rhythm of cortisol secretion. So the circadian rhythm is relating to the biological processing occurring at 24-hour interval. So here in this graph you can see that starting from the noon and then up to 6 p.m., then from midnight to the morning of the 6 a.m., and then from morning till the noon, which is 12 o'clock. So you can see that there is a increase, then decrease, then certain increase, and then a lot of decrease, and then a large increase in the amount of the secretion of cortisol taking place in the human body. So let's start from the noon, which is from 12 o'clock. So we can see that the plasma cortisol concentration is increasing, and it increases up to the 6 p.m. time, and then it starts to decrease, and at midnight it only starts to slightly increase, and then after midnight, which is 12 a.m., then it starts to decrease. So the cortisol secretion is minimum in the morning at 6 a.m. Then from the morning, the cortisol secretion in the plasma increases and goes to the maximum levels, and then it starts to decrease again, and at noon time, which is 12 o'clock, the cortisol secretion is at minimum. So that is how the cortisol secretion in normal conditions is taking place inside the human body. Right now, cortisol, its role in diseases and medication. So what is happening in case of diseases and as a result of medication on the concentration of cortisol. So first of all, it is hypercortisolism, which is also known as Cushing's syndrome. So in case of Cushing's syndrome, there is an increased concentration of ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic hormone, as well as the obesity is also taking place. So the obesity is the condition of taking or gaining weight of human body when a person becomes more obese or fat, as well as a result of increased concentration of the cortisol, the tumors, they can occur in the pituitary gland as well as the adrenal gland. There is another physiological condition which is taking place as a result of hypercortisolism, which is known as iatrogenic, and this condition is physician caused, and this condition is induced by either by the physician's words or therapy. So that is especially of a complication resulting from treatment. So when the doctor is treating the patient who is suffering from certain disease, so during that treatment, either the hypercortisolism is taking place, or the wording which is used by the physician or doctor, that can also cause the Cushing syndrome or the hypercortisolism. Now another condition or disease is hypocortisolism, which is also known as the Addison disease. So what is happening in Addison disease? So it is a glandular disorder caused by the failure of function of the adrenal cortex of the adrenal gland, and the symptoms which are taking place as a result of hypocortisolism are anemia, which is the decreased concentration of red blood cells, as well as the appearance of brownish skin. Right. So the controlled secretions of adrenal glands. So which means that the adrenal glands, they secrete their hormones in a controlled manner. So the releases of the hormones are taking place in short bursts. So it means that the adrenal gland secretes its hormones in small quantities. Now, the secretion of the adrenal glands is being regulated by signals from the nervous system, that is adrenal medulla release of epinephrine. So as we know that the adrenal medulla is being innervated by the sympathetic nervous system, and that is why the nervous system is maintaining and regulating the secretion of the adrenal medulla hormones, which are epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are also known as the stress hormone or fight or flight hormone. Now, other hormones also regulate the secretions from the adrenal gland. For example, the ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic hormone, which is released by the pituitary gland. So that stimulates the cortisol release from the adrenal gland. So adrenal cortex is being controlled by the pituitary, and adrenal medulla is being controlled by the nervous system. And that is how the regulation, that is increase or decrease in the concentration of the secretion of the adrenal glands, is being maintained. So these are the references for further reading and explanation, and I will stress on the textbook of medical physiology by Guyton and Hall. So if you read further details about the adrenal glands, adrenal medulla, and adrenal cortex, so this book is very good for further reading and to clear your concept about the secretions of the adrenal glands and the roles which are performed by the adrenal glands hormones. Thank you.